Hello, friends. How are we all doing tonight? Welcome to Tuesday after the farm show. I don't know if Miles Krieger has a voice left or not, but we're glad that he joined us on here tonight. So, Outlawed with Ron Stone every Tuesday night, guys. I am in my car heading to Missouri for work because tractor pulling parts are very expensive, so I have to work my butt off. So it's all good.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Ron Stone here. We've got the Miles Krieger. Miles, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much.
Are you traveling down the road as Jason is, or are you home?
No, I just did get home. We had our final swim meet of the season tonight, and got home. Yeah, so I'm at the Krieger abode.
At the Krieger abode there in Indiana. How are the vocal cords, my friend?
It's not been great. Dan and I had this wild idea that on Saturday night we were going to do the wave, and after the wave concluded on Saturday night, he was completely out of voice, and I was in the can, almost out of voice, and then finally somewhere in the pro stock class, I threw my last little bit and I was out. So kind of lucky, I guess I should say, that Dan and I collectively made it and nursed it through. But I don't know that either one of us sounded much like an announcer by the time Saturday night finished.
I do recall you guys doing the wave, and you guys were really trying to get the crowd pumped up. So, and Dan, I think you were having some voice issues as well there Saturday night. You were hurting a little bit.
Yeah, I come up with something. I don't know exactly what it was, but after the afternoon session, then we started up the night session. You could tell something was going on. So it was just, but we did the wave in memory of Butch. So that was we had to do it. So it was
energetic for sure.
It was worth it. So yeah,
you're doing a great job. I could tell Dan, I could hear it a little bit. I mean, I sing and announce as well, and I could hear when you really were pushing it. I thought, I bet he's hurting a little bit. I could tell, but been there, done that. Been there and done that for sure. So,
which on that note, you did a beautiful job with the anthem both nights that you sang. I had multiple people come by and compliment all of the singers this year, which was good and very neat. But I had several people speak very highly of your rendition there. So kudos to you on that. And I can only imagine what it's like to do that on a Friday night sold out crowd when there's about 17,000 people staring at you.
You know what? I do it all summer long. I mean, I don't do it at every pull, but I do it at a lot of pulls. And it's just like it's part of the job. I just do it. My knees were shaking a little bit.
I imagine so.
Thursday night, I'm like, why are my knees shaking?
Yeah. Friday night
same
was
here.
my
I was going to say, same here. It was, a lot of people had, who is this guy? That was the, the biggest thing was who, where did he come from? So that was excellent job. Excellent.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And of course, thank you guys both for coming on. I did reach out to Leslie, and she said she was going to be on the road headed for a Monster Jam event. So she couldn't come on, but Dan, give us your overview of what did you take away from Farm Machinery Show 2023?
Well, I mean, your top stories are, obviously crowds. Crowds were excellent this year. Yes. I think we had 3 sellouts officially, and I think Thursday night was almost a sellout, is what they were saying. So that was, I would have to say that was one of the big storylines. Was the crowds this year at the farm show. Just everybody was excited, and like I say, they were selling tickets like hotcakes. And then you have your pulling stories, which I would have to say probably the biggest would be, I would say, the colors in the pro stocks. I would say that was something that we haven't seen in forever, really. That
right.
A blue one, an orange one, and a green one for the finals in the top 3. That's history there. And then I'd have to say Wayne Sullivan winning on his 41st time in Louisville has to be up there for one of the all-time coolest things to happen at that show.
Yeah, that was cool. Of course, I was rooting for our Outlaw mod, on the preliminary round there on, was it Thursday night, I think? Was it Wednesday night? Wednesday night when the mods ran. But Wayne Sullivan, I grew up watching him, the little track close to my house in Ohio. Eddie Sullivan and Wayne Sullivan, the old Kentuckian that had the Road X on it, and everything. So that was cool. If our outlaw guy didn't win, I was rooting for the Sullivans to get out there and take the win. I always stop and talk to those guys for a long time. So Donnie and Wayne there. Miles, have you ever seen as big a crowd as what there was there on Saturday afternoon?
No, I guess I'll tell you, like, I've been going to that show since I was a baby. I mean, obviously, I grew up across the river. It was my dad's hometown pull, is what he would tell a lot of people. And so, I've never seen that many people at the Expo Center. I mean, I finally asked Mike Witt, I said, how do I get from my stage to Broadbent without it taking me 32 minutes? Because Friday morning, it took me 32 minutes after I got done with my road show to get to Broadbent for the drivers meeting. And I said, I can't spend 32 minutes walking over there. I need to go faster. And he said, well, take the shortcut and cut through Freedom Hall and go out the back door. I said, okay. But, the crowds were incredible. And I think we'll see some press release stuff coming from Kentucky venues and the Kentucky State Fair Board here shortly that tells us that there was an insane amount of people there that exceeded any kind of capacity you could imagine. And then, from the storyline perspective, there are a few other things that kind of resonated in my mind after kind of getting back and studying a little bit more. But, the Nichols tire thing and the two-wheel drive side with the sweep of the finals was a pretty interesting scenario. And as to kind of what the future might be for that tire. And then obviously there was a lot of discussion and a lot of talk this week about what things were going to look like, from adding 2 sessions of Limited Pro. And I think they did a fantastic job of kind of living up to the hype and the billing. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that our thoughts and prayers are certainly with the Gerlach family right here at our home and with all the folks I've spoken with as well. So, kind of a bittersweet way to end what was a really awesome week. But yeah, I mean, I think the storylines as a whole, a tie in the Super Farm class was something I didn't really kind of anticipate. And then, again, the fuel kind of flipped the script a little bit. We went back more alky heavy this year as opposed to all diesel last year. But then you look at the finals and Kent Payne puts himself right there in the top 3 again. So, some pretty awesome stories there.
So, now let's get in the background of you guys just a little bit. Dan, you're like the pulling historian is what everybody kind of labels you as you have all this pulling knowledge. How did you get into pulling? How did you get into announcing? Just tell us the whole story here, if you could.
Well, the pulling part of it, I got, back early 80s. We used to go up to the Niagara Falls Convention Center. There was a small arena up there, and saw our first family. We went up there and we saw our first pull, and I was hooked. That was basically it. And then every time that they would come into the area, as far as, outdoors, indoors, we always went to the pulls. And at one time, we had quite a few pulls in my area. We had Hamburg, New York. We had Syracuse, New York. We had Cayuga, Canada, which was about an hour and a half into Canada. And then like TNT would always come to Niagara Falls and then Rochester, New York. So, I mean, within, 2 hours of my house, we had all kinds of pulling going on. So right. It was just, and then I was big too in the stock car racing as well. But like I said, the pulling was always, it was always fun to go to watch and all that. So, and then later in life, when I quit, I raced cars for up through 2004.
Okay.
And at that time, my oldest boy was 2 years old, and I decided, we're like too much time in the garage, and I'm like, I can do this later on down the road. So got away from racing, and I've always been in the pulls. In 2005, I was like at the local pulls, and I'm listening to the guy, and I'm like, he's not very good. I'm like, I think I could do this, So I called the president at the time and never got back to me. So it was like, okay, well, I guess my career's already on, didn't even get going. But then the next year, it just so happened Henry Everman became president. And I told Henry what I was thinking. And he's like, hey, he says, give it a shot. So, I started doing it there. And actually, 2006, that was the first year I met Miles. We were up in Fergus, Ontario. We did a pull up there. And I was with the local organization. And Miles was the touring announcer. So he was the big guy. So I was like, oh, this is pretty neat. So that's when I got rolling with that. And just after time, I did, state circuit for, a bunch of years, and then started doing Eastern New York as well. And then it just kind of, rolled in other things, and PPL started asking me to do a few hooks for them. And then it just kind of went from there. And, and here we are.
Now you're one of the voices of the National Farm Machinery Show. Very cool. And Miles, of course, we know you're Jason. You all right, buddy? You all right?
Yep. No, I just a little bit of cough. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to cough on top of Miles. Hey, real quick before you talk to Miles, that Fergus, Ontario, was that NTPA or was that ATPA?
So that was that is a very trick question, because that is the year that ATPA defunct. PPL was formed, and in that particular year, USA Pulling was formed out of the ATPA that failed, and two investors out of Colorado basically bought the rights to a lot of that, and so we ended up going up to Fergus for a 2-day deal there. It was a Saturday night, Sunday afternoon. We got rain on Sunday afternoon, and they dried the track with a helicopter, which is something I've never seen in my life. And but yeah, that was. But we actually had some fantastic pulling that year. Steve Jacks and Jeremy Nelson loaded up that year and brought both pair of Jacks trucks plus the 41 Dodge up, and they ran for the USA Pulling Circuit points that particular year, which included some Outlaws hooks, included a couple of ITPA hooks, and then included this event in Fergus. So there were about 10 hooks that were encompassed in that whole points race. So yeah, it was a neat deal. And Dan says I was the touring announcer. I thought I was a pretty big deal, but I wasn't much of anything at all. I got humbled pretty quick. I made my way across the state line and made it over to the river where Mr. Bennett lived, and he taught me how to be an announcer a few times. And then I met Dan, and he taught me how to be a few times. And
yeah, I know about that one, Miles.
I met Art Downs in Illinois, and he taught me a few times as well. So I learned a little bit each way I went.
Yeah, I like it. No, I was curious about that because I felt like that was that time frame of
yes, sir. 2000. That would have been summer of 2006. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, obviously, for folks watching, 99.9% of the folks that are watching right now know that Butch Krieger is your dad,
Sure.
Miles. And you've been around pulling all your life, obviously. But when did you realize, hey, I think I could do that? Give me a microphone. When did that point in your life? When did that happen?
Yeah, so I guess I was blessed because the school system that I went to school in allowed for a basketball broadcasting. We had a radio and television department at my high school, which was the very first ever radio station and television department in the state of Indiana for a high school program. So both my brother and I both were able to broadcast basketball and baseball and football games over the radio all through high school. And we did weekly broadcasts, read the announcements through the school, that kind of stuff. So both of us had a little bit of exposure to that kind of scenario. And then it was 2002 that I did my very first ATPA event. And I had done a little bit of here and there type of stuff just on the local level, some hot farm type stuff. But 2002 was my first Grand American event with ATPA, and Mears hired me, and I went to Salem, Illinois, and then we went to Kankakee, Illinois, and did a few hooks up that way, and then came back down. So that was really kind of where it all started. And then I did maybe 4 or 5 hooks a year with ATPA until ATPA folded. And then in 2006, that's the summer I really kind of got to experience the Outlaws a little bit. I went and did about 6 hooks with them, and I did 3 or 4 hooks with the ITPA, and then went to Fergus, and then the next year, obviously, USA Pulling didn't exist anymore, and I did 6 or so events with Outlaws and a few events with PPL, and then after that, it's just been pretty well PPL and NTPA, and then one Outlaw event where I got to work with you during the COVID year. So
Yep, that's right, 2020.
yeah, I've been really lucky and really blessed. I had great people like Clint Tucker and Jim Austin and John Moomaw, who were pushing for me and opening doors for me as well. I offended my father at John Moomaw's funeral, where I spoke and I said I didn't want to be known as Butch Krieger's kid. I wanted to be known as Miles Krieger. I didn't want to just get to announce tractor pulls because I was Butch Krieger's son. I wanted to earn the right to get to announce tractor pulls. And while there are some that I don't necessarily fit the mold of the announcing style that they prefer, I've been lucky enough to get to do some really big shows and work with some really awesome people like Dan, or I got to work with Jason several times. I got to work with you. So all of us have all shared a microphone at a pool. And the cool thing I look at this is, I don't view any of us announcers as competitors. I view us all as peers, and I want to learn from each of you and hope that I can bring something from each of you and interject it back in. And I feel like there's enough pie out there for all of us to be able to go and enjoy an event and then come home. And if I don't have that event the next year, well, I'll be okay with that. And then hopefully I can find another one to fulfill sometime. And but yeah, I mean, my dad was a touring announcer and did for all my life. So, being at Louisville and watching him for his 40th year in 19, and then kind of being there for 20 my first year, and then 22 and 23, it's been pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's a great outlook. I mean, I just had the thought in my head. We've got 4 announcers on here. We'll have to get control of this show, or it could go for hours. Just saying.
Yeah, so well, the blessing for you guys is I have a 3-year-old little boy that doesn't feel very good, and a 6-year-old and 10-year-old little girl that got to go to school. So I'm either going to have a wife peeking in here pretty soon that says these kids need baths, or I'm going to have little kids crawling on me telling me they need baths at any minute. So certainly, I want to. I also want to highlight something else. I think from this week, pretty awesome of the Kentucky State Fair Board to announce the Hall of Fame on Saturday night. And, I know my peers had talked to me about it. That was something I knew nothing about, going in. Dan didn't even share that with me at all in any kind of conversation. Yeah, completely locked key. So, for my brother and I to be sitting there and hear the news that they're one starting this deal, and then 2 dad's the first time in, that was a pretty awesome honor. And the last thing I'll touch on from the week is I know there's been a lot of discussion last night on Jason's podcast as well, but pretty neat to see some energy, positive, negative, good, bad, coming from Full Pull Bets, and Dan and I were pretty excited to be a part of that announcement and that involvement as well. So, I think all of us objectively on this deal right now have a vision and a dream and a goal of what this sport can look like. And I feel like we can all be somewhat closed-minded and shut that off at times, or we can look to the horizon and say, what, how do we get there? And little things or big things can be in our line to help us get there. So certainly that's another big storyline, I think, from the, the farm show.
I think thank you for bringing that up. I think all 4 of us right here on this show right now, in having a good feeling about Full Pull Bets, is all 4 of us in the end goal. We all want to see pulling elevated to another level that we think all believe it deserves. I mean, would you guys agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, this is the first thing, guys. Yeah, this is the first thing, guys, that all 3 major associations are unified on it. We can't get together on a super farm rule to cover the nation, but this is the first time all the people got together and truly said, hey, this is good for the sport. And Miles, you did an amazing job announcing interviewing Chase on the stage. And Chase and the people who own Full Pull Bets, the whole idea was to roll this out to the pullers, or at least let them know this is coming before it went public. And that's what, that was kind of some of the secrecy that was some of the teasing that we did with Beer Money Pulling Team. And Miles helped out as well for the Pullers Happy Hour to get this. But when you want to talk about something that truly can bring money back to the sport, the horse that wins the Kentucky Derby wins $2 million, or the guy who owns that horse. And it's not because people like horse racing. It's because of gambling and it's legal sports wagering. And that I'm not saying we can win $2 million at a tractor pull, but there's going to be way more money ever coming into the sport. And I think a lot after last night's show, Miles and Dan and Ron, what I took away from it was a lot of the negativity is because of the vagueness of it, but there's so much vagueness of it right now because it has to be. The gaming commissions have not passed it in all the states yet, and Chase, the ownership group, their attorneys are just telling them to lock it down. So he's reaching out to people like Miles, people like Dan, people like Jason Schultz, Ron Stone, saying, "Hey, let's keep talking about this. Let's keep it active." And then
That's right.
to have Adam Bauer on our show. Adam Bauer doesn't like social media. Adam Bauer doesn't like talking to people. Okay,
That's
so
right.
to have him on our show last night, and Jeff Hurt,
Yep.
and Travis Slawbaugh and Tyler Slaw, it meant a lot to me because those are my pulling heroes. I love it when I can say I got to work with Dan Mayer at Ellsworth, Wisconsin, or I got to work with Miles Krieger at Cloverdale or Gordyville, or I got to work with Ron at the Iowa State Fair. You guys were people that you're my announcer heroes. To say I got to work with you, that's like a feather in my cap. And then for those guys to come on our show last night, those are my pulling heroes. That's what it's all about. And to have them come on and support it and to be positive, and it's awesome.
Miles, do you have to go?
I'm going to go here pretty soon. Yeah.
Okay. I seen you get up there. I was unsure.
No, like I said, I hate to. I don't want to cut things short by any means at all, because it's awesome to be able to be a part of the discussion.
You need to stay married, Miles. You need to stay married.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things. Leaving her home with 3 littles while I'm gone playing tractor pulling Tuesday through Sunday is a pretty big burden. Not to mention we're in the middle of lambing season, and we've got 4 more ewes that are supposed to be having babies any day now. So we've got 29 babies in the barn, and we've got 4 more moms to deliver here in the next 3 to 4 days. So short nights around here right now. But guys, like I said, I want to join you again sometime. And Ron, if you have any other questions I can answer for you while I'm on here, I want to. I don't want to control the whole conversation here in the short period.
You just let us know when you got to go, buddy. Dan, let's go back to Dan real quick. Dan, I want to touch on the historian part that you play in pulling. You have a lot of knowledge up here about pulling and who won what pull, the Indy Super Pull in 1979 or what have you. And I have to say thank you to you, because you helped me complete my Pulling Power magazine collection a few years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah,
I had I think there were 2 editions that I did not have, and I seen you put those up for sale. And of the few that you had the 2. It's like, Dan, I got to have those. And now I have all of them. So thank you for that. But tell us a little bit about your knowledge of, where does that come from? Just the hunger for it, or what?
Well, yeah, growing up, like in the 80s, pulling, literally, people don't remember that, but pulling was on literally from 1987 up through early 90s, every day at 5 o'clock on ESPN. Miles' dad was big into that, was big on that. He was part of the broadcast. So there was pulling on, you turn on ESPN at 5 o'clock on Monday through Friday, you saw pulling. So it just worked its way there. And then, I always, then I get the magazines and subscribe to this, subscribe to that. And, I always just stayed in contact with it. And I had 1995, I had a pretty bad accident and hurt my hand really bad, my right hand, while I was in college, and had about a year and a half where I couldn't work. So it was and at that time, the internet was kind of new. So I was I saw a drag list website, and it's still out there. It's, it lists every drag racer that was ever made, ever ran down a track.
Right.
And I kind of got the idea. I'm like, why couldn't I do that with pulling? So that kind of got me going with putting lists and stuff together and trying to get champions, because nobody, if you go back and, try to find champions for everything, good luck. It was And
Sure.
Bowling Green was one that was really good because all their old programs, like the first year I went to Bowling Green, I think was 86. And like the program had all the past winners in there. So it was, that wasn't too hard, but all these other organizations, it was crazy because nobody kept any of that stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm like, and then I started asking pullers, and then pullers asked somebody else. And before you know it, I think I've pretty much got everything. It was funny because we were at a fish restaurant the other day in Louisville, or outside of Louisville. We used to always go there every Friday with Butch for the last, I don't know how many years. So kind of like in memory of Butch thing, we went to the fish restaurant and had a gentleman that was watching the live stream. He came up and started talking, and we got talking, and he told me, he says, "Hey," he says, "I got a whole bin of farm show stuff." He says that, I kept programs and this and that. And he says, if you want to, check things out, he says, come and grab them from me. And, so that's really what, so we'll be able to get some more farm show stuff.
Awesome.
Because I think we have just about all the winners. Brian Lively helped me with that one. We've been working on that. We tried to get that done before the 50th anniversary. And, but it's just all these different things, but it's just, and I've got somebody building a new website for me. So that should be out here pretty, I'm hoping within the next month or so. So
Very cool.
It'll be, point and click everything. So it'll be
And
really
that's pulling
real
reference,
nice.
right, Dan?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. It'll be new and improved.
Yeah, I just want to make sure everybody knows we're talking about pullingreference.com, everybody.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So
there actually is a website in addition to the Facebook page then.
Yeah. Yeah. I just usually Facebook, I just put, pictures, and I was, Photo Joe and I come to this past October, we come to a deal, and I have the rights to all his videos, all his pictures. Did that this past October. He just completely wanted out of everything. So so that's been another work in progress. I mean, 2 million negatives or whatever is in,
Wow.
it's, that's don't mention it to my wife, because it's and videos, and there's, most of them are still on VHS, and they're, there's just tubs and tubs of videos and stuff. So it's
tedious
but
work
if that's
there.
just gone, you don't, you got to keep it going. So
No, but what you do is cool, because there wasn't anyone out there that, we were talking about the ATPA, it went away, who's documenting those champions,
right.
So,
Right.
it's needed. What you're doing is needed in the sport. Yeah, people remember it, but eventually, people pass. A lot of our heroes from back then have passed,
Dan's like a disciple. He's like a disciple. He's writing the Bible, the Pulling Bible. We appreciate that. So.
Well, even like the Outlaws. I thought, actually, Joe and Carol had helped me a lot with that, because they had all the old outlaw programs back to when they started. So it was one of those where we're going through programs trying to figure out, even all the outlaw champions, and it was, and we're like, well, let's see where they officially started, and then we'll go from there. And so it was a lot of work, but
hey, Dan,
what
were some of the magazines growing up? Like, I remember, it was like Power Tracks. Like, everybody jump in the comments. It'd be fun to hear what magazine.
Well, you could go to the grocery store, and you could buy truck pulls was a big one.
Yep.
The off-road truck pulls were big. Ron had mentioned Pulling Power. Pulling Power, you had to go like to the Walden Books. You couldn't get that one at the your grocery store. You had to go. But Off-Road Magazine, I could remember walking down the aisle, and you see Orange Blossom Special on the front of it, and it just crazy, and I had a chance to meet Alan back. Oh boy, one of the years during Louisville. I want to say it was probably 13 or 14. I went over and visited Alan over in Georgetown, and it was just like meeting one of your childhood icons. It was amazing. So we talked for 3 or 4 hours, and then he signed a bunch of stuff for me that I had, and I was a 10-year-old kid, and I got a little orange blossom for Christmas. That's
I remember that.
But, so you had, which was cool this weekend. Dan Patrick was there at the farm show. Now you all remember Dan Patrick.
Oh,
with
yeah.
The Warlord,
Oh, yeah.
The funny car, before he did all the monster truck stuff. So, I mean, that's the kind of thing, a lot of people don't realize, and then you had like the NTPA had their Polar magazine, TNT had their Power Tracks magazine. So everybody had, but I mean, it was, the new, when the stuff came in the mail every month, it was, you had a stack of stuff, and it was, and then I just never threw it out. I always kept it, and much to my wife's chagrin, but yes, I still have it.
Dan, I can remember that the Pulling Power magazines because when they first came out, they were seasonal. They were like fall and winter.
Yeah, there was 4 of them.
For a year.
Yep.
And I can remember going to the newsstand and hoping, my fingers crossed, that the new one would be in and it wouldn't be there. And I'd be like, oh. But, opening those old ones, like the first issue and stuff, it just kind of brings back memories from that time. It's crazy, those old Pulling magazines. But go ahead, Jason. You had a question for Dan.
No, I was just going to say to Dan, it kind of just feels like, oh, shoot, I lost my train of thought. Forget it. You keep going. I'm trying to, I got to focus on the road.
As he's going through a cornfield.
Yeah, that you mentioned Dan Patrick. I have pictures from him at Taze Valley from the early 70s pulling a single engine. I can't remember if it was a cock shed or what kind of tractor it was, but and it was black with flames on it. It always had to have flames on it. But
Leslie actually had talked to him, ran into him, and he had said he had ran at the farm show 78. I think she said was the last year that he ran at the farm show. He had the twin engine at the time, but he was,
and then of course
had
the funny car
that,
the play school made the toy out of, the Warlord. Yep. That was cool. And they got into monster trucks.
And then Dave Bennett's neighbors there, the Gewins, with the black gold truck, and they made that one. And, I thought Dave, he might have driven the one, the husband's truck. Yeah, Dave had driven.
I think.
Yep. He had driven a couple of them over the years. And, but yeah, it's pretty neat, and like you say, that was back when pulling was, going coast to coast. They would run out in, California, up in Seattle, and all over the place. And you follow it in the magazines, and and then it just kind of slowly but surely, it just kind of, started getting away from that.
Yeah. In the mid to late 80s, pulling was just massive. I mean, filling stadiums with fans to come to the pulls. I can remember the pictures of the pulls in Florida. Even the stands were just packed, standing room only. Monster trucks, I think. I mean, Dan, your opinion? I think monster trucks took a little bit of that.
Well, they took a whole bunch. I mean, they were. There he is. There's the 3-year-old.
We're getting ready to put this little guy to bed here real soon.
Future tractor pull announcer there, Miles.
Yep, get him. Let's get him.
Tractor pull sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I get old enough.
He's got to be old enough, he said.
Got to be old enough. That's
cool.
He wants to play Monster Jam.
He does.
That's what he's excited about. We're going to play Monster Jam tomorrow. We went to Monster Jam a couple weeks ago and had a ball. So yeah, give me 2 minutes and I'll be right back with
You're good, Miles.
But no, like you talked about, Ron, monster trucks did take away from it. I mean, and then eventually, actually, I had talked to Mike Ott about this weekend, because Mike was big with the U.S. Hot Rod after they purchased TNT Motorsports, and they acquired Gravedigger and all the big names at that time. And he had talked about how they had, the guy in charge, Charlie Mancuso, had decided, pulling's too expensive. He says, they lost the Red Man money. And he says, it just got to the point where he says, we if you can find a way to pay for it, we can do it. And then Mike said it just kind of dried up, and, that was, they decided to go with monster trucks. He said, cheap stuff like quads, and that was it for stadium pulling, so, But
So can we ever get back there again, Dan, in your opinion? Can we ever get back to that, what it was, late 80s, early 90s?
I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to say maybe. I'm going to say maybe. I mean, you never know. I mean, there's always.
I agree with Dan.
You know, I mean,
I
we've
think it'd
got
have to
this,
be exhibition again, Dan.
you know, I mean, like you
Oh,
say,
can you
with the,
guys
you
hear
know,
me?
the full, with the full pull bets, you know, I mean, the sky's the limit, really. I mean, you know, it's going to be a work in progress, and, you know, just everybody just, you know, hang on and, you know, and help promote things. And,
Yeah.
but there's a good possibility it could, you know, and,
Yeah, I
you know,
agree.
get out of rural America and get back into the, you know,
Exactly.
the cities. And because when you look at, like, you know, polling in general, what city has the biggest poll? And that's got to be Louisville.
Yeah.
No other poll is near a big city. I mean, really, when you think about it,
Yeah.
you know, so Louisville's really the biggest, you know, that we have. So we need to get, you know, back to that. So we'll
Yeah.
see what happens. But
yeah, I'm one of the promoters at the Cowtown Showdown in Kansas City, and
okay.
I can tell you and I think this is polling in general is bridging that gap, because you have folks that are ag related, have anything to do with agriculture. They know about pulling, and that's the bulk of our fans. But in the 80s, I don't think it was that way. I think we encompassed, you know, people from the suburbs and from the cities, and now it's kind of drifted apart again. And people will still, I'm sure you guys get this question, well, what is a tractor pull? Sometimes what are they pulling? What are they doing? I mean, have you guys heard those questions before?
Oh yeah. Yep.
You know, but I think you've got your ag people that like the tractors, but then you have your hot rod people that like noise, you know, and I think that's where we need to, you know, bring those hot rod people in back. You know, everybody likes drag racing, people like stock cars, you know, so I think that kind of ties in.
Right.
And years ago, I think that helped because, you know, you could go into, you know, Madison Square Garden and put on a pole and the place was packed.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, you know, people were just curious, and, you know, they put on, you know, it was a show.
Yeah.
Hey,
Miles,
Dan, did you? Sorry, Dan. Did you announce the Mac Trailer Winter Nationals last year?
Yes, Miles and I did. Yes.
Okay. So I didn't get to go, but I sent my team down there to get video, and I talked to Mike Ott about this, but I was told it felt different. Like these truckers, and that's in the Mid America Truck Show, the biggest truck show in the world, I'm pretty sure. And they, you know, there was 9,000 people there, is what Mike Ott told me. And he said it felt it was a different fan base than maybe our traditional like Louisville crowd. I'm trying to say Louisville, right? Because I've been getting picked on about it all the time.
Louisville.
Yeah. So, but can you touch on? I mean, that's, you know, I mean, what made me think of that, Dan, was you said something about the spark plug crowd, you know, or the hot rod crowd, you know, but to have that trucking crowd, if you will, come in and see the pros and the minis and the super semis in there. And I don't remember all the classes that were there last year. I think there was 4. I'm missing one of them, but
super stock.
Super stock.
Yeah. Did it feel different last year? Like, was it a different crowd?
I think so. I mean, they were, you know, different to different things. I mean, it was, you know, they were right off the get-go, they were, you know, curious what they saw. And, you know, it wasn't like the farm show crowd where most of them had been there for many years. You know, this was, you know, something new and something exciting. And, you know, right from the opening ceremonies, people were hooked on it. And I think they're going to do well again this year. I think, you know, a lot of people are going to come back and say, hey, what we saw last year was a good show. So, we'll see. We'd like to see it again.
Yep. And then to Jeremy's point on the screen, you touch on this, you know, Ron asked you that question, Dan, you know, could we ever get back to that? And I think, you know, remember monster trucks were kind of the gimmick at those earlier truck and tractor pulls. I think if you could bring you know, a couple of 3 or 4 engine mods in, or a big, you know, diesel smoker, you know, kind of do some exhibitions with stuff like that. I think that would be a way, Dan, to reintroduce pulling back into that. But at the same time, I mean, Monster Jam is its own franchise. It's freaking huge.
Right.
So, but
and like I said, they don't have any room for, you know, anything else really. You know, their shows are, you know, concise, to the point. you know, and that's what they built, you know. So it's, you know, come in, do the pit party, do the show, and then afterward do autographs and sell, you know, and it works.
That's where,
you know,
but Monster Jam's a business, and pulling
Right.
still is a hobby. I mean, I'm not saying the Outlaws and the PPL and the NCPA, those are professionally run organizations, but most of our pullers, or all of our pullers, have real jobs. And I think that's where I'm really hoping with Full Pull Bets, if we can maybe transfer this into the hobby into that professional sports a little bit, we can do more of these interview parties and, you know, sponsor parties and really truly get there. Because right now you got some guys that are rolling in, you know, 2 hours before the pull because they had to work until noon. And I don't know. It's exciting. It's just exciting for all of that. But Monster Jam is a well-oiled machine. It's a billion. I mean, I'm sure it's $1 billion industry. Doesn't Disney own it now, or ESPN or something?
Feld Entertainment. They own Disney on Ice and a couple other entities, but yeah.
So that's how I put that together.
So it's still Feld, isn't it? Is it still Feld?
Yeah, it's Feld.
Okay.
Feld owns it, but they own Disney on
they own
Ice.
the trucks, Miles, right? They own all the trucks now, right?
Like there are still some that are private, independent hired, but yeah, I mean the ones that you're seeing on the T-shirts and the ones that you're seeing on the commercials they're owned by the people that, you know, by Feld.
Yeah, Miles, I don't know if you heard all the conversation we kind of were touching on, you know, if we can get back to the glory days of pulling when, you know, it was standing room only at big events and filling stadiums, you know, how do we get there? How do we get back to that, or can we?
Sure. I would love that. You know, I think the thing we've always kind of had with our sport is this sort of ingenuity. But the thing we sort of lost the vision on was the idea of, you know, in the mid 80s, people were winning pulling events. And if they won a point series, they got a new Chevy truck. Yep. And, you know, they were doing some really, really big things in that era. And then all of a sudden, you know, the downside is in that regard, we stopped. And, you know, all that was, you know, corporate America started to grow. Things started to change. Economic downturns come and go. But the pulling fan hasn't changed. I mean, it you know, the people that are the nuts and bolts and the core of who we are, they're the same person. That sort of, you know, 18 to 65-year-old that does a lot of their own work on their own equipment and has a desire to get their hands dirty, and on a weekend on a Saturday night has an extra $25, and instead of going to the drive-in or doing something different, they want to go watch some horsepower and watch people tear stuff up. And that's where we kind of have always been able to come into the game. And you know, the truck show was a perfect example of that, because I mean, I told Dan, I mean, obviously blessing to be able to be on the microphone for both of those events in Louisville, but I had a lot of fun, just fun at that event. The farm show is, for me, it's so much of the history and the kind of idea of everything that it brings with it, that there are times where I almost feel like with everything I have to do that, you know, I just don't even get to sleep that week that I'm down there. You know, so walking in on a Saturday afternoon at 2:00 and turning the microphone on at 4:00 and being done at 9:00. And that was the gist of it. We walked in, got our marching orders right before we turned the mics on, talked about the pullers, and then we were done. And that was a big deal.
That has to feel weird. That has to feel weird.
So, you know, in Louisville, the opposite direction of pulling there, that was something interesting as well. And, you know, so watching them pull out the door as opposed towards the wall where the sand pile is. And Terry Blackburn made all of our hearts race just a little bit when he almost hit the wall. Yeah, I mean, all of those elements are pretty awesome and pretty unique. But I'm going to jump off of here and get a little boy to sleep. And if I'm going to try to jump back on, if I can, and maybe I can rejoin you here. Let me.
Thanks, Miles. Right. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for having me.
Thank you for coming. So, you know, talking about pulling, we're talking about trying to get back to those glory days. And Miles said, you know, the fans are the same. Some of the generations, the newer generations of fans, you know, I don't know if it's just, you know, if our culture is changing or what, but I can tell you back, for instance, if a monster truck almost slid off a car, you know, back in the early days, they just kind of crept over the cars, you know. If they slid off to one side, you heard a collective, oh, like,
Yeah.
is he going to roll over? Now it's got to blow up, it's got to shoot parts out on the track and catch on fire. Can we do that? Can we get those fans and keep them as fans and pulling?
That's one thing that I think you have to look at as far as do you need to change the formula for something? Because pulling's biggest downfall is the downtime, is between the hooks. So you have to figure out some way to, either, you really can't speed it up because, track work is track work, and
right.
You got the best of the best out there, but you've still got a couple minutes that you there's nothing going on. So it's you have to entertain the kids somehow in between, years ago they did it with gorillas and chickens and name it, but
two-wheel drive ambulances and
yeah, just exhibition stuff, but you still had that downtime. So it's like, so I think you need, everybody kind of needs to look at that. I mean, a 2-track show, no problem.
Right.
But when you're in an arena with one track, it's like, okay, what do we do? There's got to be some way to entertain, because, I know when like my oldest boy, when he was, young and we'd go to the polls, that was the biggest thing, like in between, he would have to, find something to do.
Right.
When they were pulling, he was great, but when there was nothing going on, he just, he needed something to keep him occupied. So I think that's what they need to really look at, to really get the,
yeah.
If you want to you got an arena full of kids, you got to entertain them. There's some,
Yeah, the replays, the big screens are also important. The fast measurement systems, the laser's great. We've been using the GPS system for a couple of years now, which seems to be even faster than the laser, which is great. And we have really narrowed that little window down as much as possible. But yeah, those big screens are super important. And I think too that, I'm going to throw a personal opinion out there, but, and promoters need to watch what classes they choose, as far as classes that may look the same.
Well, you're right.
You and I know the difference between a limited pro and a super farm and a light pro, but to a new fan, they honestly don't have a clue, the difference between a light pro and a limited pro and a pro, and they look the same to them. So I think to the promoters, they have to be careful with class selection and where we put those classes too. So the more you can deviate and give them some variety, I think the better. But for the pulling fans like you and I, we're gonna eat that up regardless. But to draw new fans, we need to give them some variety. So I think, and that's just my opinion.
Well, I agree with it, because I know a lot of shows, the competition director will go, smoke, noise. If you got a single track, just to kind of, like you say, just for that reason, just to try to, keep everybody, entertained, and hey, we, now we know what we're looking at, and so it kind of takes, you got the hot rod guys and in your the folks that like the farm tractors,
Yeah.
So it,
So what, there's my dad actually chiming in there. You got a typo there, Dad, by the way. Big screens replays and past history clips on the replay. That's a good idea. He didn't tell me that before, but he tells me on the show. So that's a pretty good idea. He's just in the other room. I'm here in Ohio visiting. So.
Okay.
So what's new for the farm show next year? I mean, is there anything big coming that you know of, or?
Not as of yet. I mean, everything as the year moves on, and, we'll see what happens with that. But, I think it's just, just building up, every year, and just gets bigger and better. Like Miles had mentioned, all the work they've done in Freedom Hall this year. They're still working on, work in progress on the speaker system. I know, they had mentioned that, this year wasn't going to be, the fix, but they were going to work on it. and they knew it wasn't going to be perfect. So just work in progress. So I would look for stuff like that. I mean, you look at Freedom Hall. I mean, it really has lasted. Through all the times. I mean, I think it was early '80s they lifted it, or they dug it out.
Okay.
Because it used to be. I don't think the lower bowl was there, and they dug it out, and then they that's what they actually made it. Because I've got old pictures where you can see like it's the upper level, and then that's it. And then I think somebody had told me they dug it out. I want to say like 82, 83. Might have been right around there, and they so they increased the seating capacity of it. So
Okay.
But I mean, like the new signboards this year were excellent, and
Yep.
a lot of different things. So I think they're really looking forward to keeping it, keep with them upgrades.
As a suggestion for you guys, I mean, to benefit the announcers, maybe they can bring in a monitor system for you guys next year. I know you guys both are kind of ailing with your voices right now. The better you can hear yourselves, of course, that the less you'll try to push your voice. And I think that might be what you guys are kind of ailing from, is you guys were really pushing it to hear yourselves. People that's never announced or saying, don't realize that if you can't hear yourself or hear yourself as loud as you normally do, just speaking conversation, that you will push your voice. And it's almost like you can't help it. You push it, and Dan, you know this. You push it to hear yourself, though you may not ever hear it. And then before you realize that the damage is already done. So, yeah, that would just be a suggestion I would have for the fair committee there, if they could get you guys a monitor system down there on the floor where you can hear your own voices.
Well, I think too, a lot of it has to do with like your two-wheel drives and your modified class. Okay, so you can't really hear in the arena, but you've got a live stream audience. You gotta continue to try to say something, so that's really a lot to do in how it is trying to talk over a modified or a two-wheel drive. It's just you're hurting your voice doing it.
Right.
You know what I mean? But you have to say something, otherwise the live stream there's nothing going on. So, like you say, that's another thing that it hurts it, but you got to do what you got to do. And so we'll work on that. That's the first time I've never lost my voice at a poll, and that was the first time. So it's like gotta work on something there to help.
There's in-ear systems too, Dan. You could use an in-ear system, put one.
Well, that's what they're talking about for next year. The folks with the sound and everything. It said each one of us is supposed to have something in ear next year.
Yeah, that'd be great.
We're working on that. So they had the one guy in charge had talked about that. So we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully,
you could tell they were tweaking with the system.
Right.
With each show. Right. Honestly, and it depends on where you're sitting in there. Where we were sitting there on the lower level, probably about the 75-foot mark. On Wednesday night, you guys were just seriously muffled. I mean, we couldn't tell. I was literally watching the closed captioning board. On Thursday night, you guys were clear as a bell. And then Miles was a little bit low, and they brought him up. You could tell they were tweaking and turning some knobs and trying to get it right. So, and I heard they had a brand new system, which that's awesome. So,
yeah, it wasn't brand. It was like they brought in speakers or something. I mean, it wasn't like they said they were, they said they were going to improve it, but it wasn't. They knew it wasn't going to be 100%. So that was pretty much what they could do to help. So so then they worked with that. And hopefully, maybe next year they might have a new system. So we'll see where that goes. But hopefully, that'd be nice.
Overall, I thought in my summation of it, I thought it was an awesome show from start to finish. The crowd, I love seeing all those people in the crowd. I mean, even on a Wednesday night and Thursday nights, I heard the live stream did awesome. Did you hear any live stream numbers?
I didn't hear any numbers, but we a bunch of us were talking, and it's like it has to be the largest live stream tractor pull because there's nothing going on. You know what I mean? It's like everybody gets together and has parties, and so if you're not in Louisville, you're watching it. So I think it would do very well. I haven't heard any numbers.
Okay.
I'll try to see if I can find out something. But
Yeah, that'd be
I'm
awesome.
just curious. I'm just curious. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
curious myself. But
yeah, I think it was probably a record year for him. I think live stream was probably record numbers as well. Howard Overman watched live stream. The music in the background wasn't a good thing. I kept telling the wife they need to kill that music. Very annoying. It was better by Saturday. I thought the music was a little bit too much at times, honestly. I don't mind it from time to time, but it felt like you guys had to kind of fight to get back control when you were talking for them to turn the music down.
Got a little bit like that, it seemed, because it would kill our mics at one point. Yeah. So, because Miles and I looked at each other like, "Your mic dead?" "Yeah, my mic's dead." And they would do that. So, but
yeah, but there's Miles back. I don't know what happened to Jason. Jason, are you there?
Hope he didn't go to cornfield. Well, there he is. Okay.
Yeah, I just been, you guys, like you said, we have 4 announcers on here. I don't need to do much tonight, so I'm just chilling.
Are you close to home, Jason?
No, I was worked at my Janesville, Wisconsin office today, and now I'm on my way to St. Louis. Our USA Mortgage corporate office is in St. Louis, so I'm going down there for a couple days.
Well, that's right.
I'll be down there. Be down there about midnight tonight.
I heard you do home loans.
I do. Yeah, I do mortgages. So. And I can do every state except New York. And Dylan Owens, Tom Owens' son, the Ramblin' Rose, wants to buy a house, and I can't help him in New York. So I'm trying to find him a lender in New York. New York has so many crazy laws. So I'm trying to find. So if anybody's watching and knows a loan officer or a bank in New York, let me know, because I need to hook up Dylan and help him out. Because I told him he was at the trailer one night and I might have been drinking, and I told him I'd get him pre-approved. And then he called me like last week. He's like, "Hey, remember that?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I remember that really well." And it was kind of funny. So,
Miles, you're an announcer. The most surprising thing that ever happened to you at a poll that left you speechless.
Oh gosh.
Wow, that's like asking Dan Mayer a question.
Well, I can tell you.
I want to play a game.
One.
Let's stump Dan. I want somebody type some in the comments. If Dan can't answer, he can give me $100.
Oh, wait, the most surprising or the most embarrassing? Which one?
Both.
Either, yeah.
Yeah, both.
So, yeah, most surprising. Let me think on that one. Most embarrassing was definitely at Henry, Illinois. And there were, I don't even remember how many trucks to tell you, probably 12 to 15 diesel pickups. And I'll just put you both on the spot. Dan will remember this, but do you remember the truck that Van Hazley's son Kurt used to drive?
Yeah. Coming at you? No. Shoot. What do you call it? It's in Wisconsin now.
Silver. Remember? Silver. Orange.
Yep. What did he call it?
Do you remember, Mayer?
Yeah, his was
something with the name. Miles is not saying the name.
Off constantly.
Yes.
Off constantly.
And so here comes a fella to pull, and I stated, "Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to see if he can beat off constantly." And
Miles.
the chaplain for Pullers for Christ was standing directly behind me, and he said, "What did you say?" Just as I was conversing and telling the story, I had no idea. But man, most surprising, that's a difficult one. I'll have to really ponder that. There's been some, pretty awesome storylines, and I mean, I would have traded spaces with Dan Mayer to be in Waynesburg the year that Colin Diesel, the first time that he actually won that class, Alki.
Yep.
I would have traded that one in a heartbeat.
Man, Miles, you're taking my moments from me here.
Yeah, I would have traded with you for that. Sure, but there's been some pretty awesome ones. I think about Don Masterson at Louisville. a few different times where, I got the goosebumps on my arms just watching. Now, I wasn't on the mic for those. But I guess if there was one I was truly on the mic for that kind of captured me and really left me speechless. Saturday night at Bowling Green, when Carlton Cope with the Warpath made a full pull, that was a pretty big night in terms of the crowd and the energy and the excitement.
Dan, how about you?
Well, Miles had mentioned the most exciting there was with Colin Ross over in Pennsylvania. That was one of those moments where it was, can he do it? It just worked out a perfect storm kind of thing. That was I'd have to say, and then too, like the Farm Show 19 when Don Masterson was able to lead the announcing into Miles' dad, Butch, his final call with Don Masterson. That's something I'll never forget. That was, Butch's last call there at the Farm Show, and, had a hand in that. So that was really cool. Just one of those great feel-good moments. And then I'd say most embarrassing had to be, I would say Barry Bohr up in Hillsboro, Wisconsin, and interviewed him, and he had just won the class, and he just started going and F-bomb, and I had to pull the mic away, and I wasn't expecting it. It was one of those things, but he just all of a sudden, and it was like, okay, we're done with this. And yeah, it was, so that had to be probably the most embarrassing thing that I've ever, and you weren't expecting it. So it was like, where's this coming from? But yeah, that'd have to be it.
I can go back, Miles. This is your dad was doing a TNT pool, and I think it was down south, maybe in Virginia or North Carolina or something, and he was interviewing Chris Holdorf.
Yeah,
and he had just taken the lead, and he's like, Chris, you think that's going to hold up? And Chris started talking, and he said, oh, Lamont will probably beat me, the turd. He called him a turd, and you never heard that back then. And just to look at your dad's face, I could tell he was like, you can't say that. But he got it in there, and it made it onto the show. It was kind of funny when watching it, and you can still see that now. Watch it on YouTube.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I've got that one on YouTube channel there. Yeah,
you remember that?
Yeah.
Watching it was hilarious, but I'm sure that was. He kind of didn't know what to say after he said that.
He was great. You never knew what he was going to say. That was, he was a character. That was.
Yeah, and that goes into bowling could use some characters like that. There's some out there. He was a character. People liked watching because he was kind of the John Force of bowling back then.
Right.
I'll never forget the year that Billy Beers and LD Nation started rolling around in the middle of the winner's circle at Bowling Green one year. That was a pretty interesting one. But yeah, Holdorf was he was a whole nother animal, like on a totally different level than I think a whole lot of people have messaged. And I've traded some messages with him back in the day about trying to get back. He'd actually gotten into some drag racing, I think, some pro mod racing or something like that for a while. But you go back into the roots of those guys, and we could sure use a little bit more personality at times. Guys like him, and there were others that were just monumental personalities that made an interview or the environment they just brought it like crazy.
Well, what's interesting about like this tire deal with the 2-wheel drives, remember when the CPEX came in? I mean, that was mid 80s.
Yeah.
And they were, Holdorf, I don't know what he paid for a set of tires there for, he bought them from Jim Brockman, but that was when they transitioned from the Firestones to the CPEC pulling tire.
Yep.
And only a few had them, and it was, you had to have them. And, that was the same kind of deal. It's interesting how, history kind of repeats itself here again,
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, you're speaking for those who don't know, the Nichols tires went 1, 2, 3 in the finals in the 2-wheel drive class. There Saturday night. So that was pretty cool. So I think there may be, I don't think there would be any better way for them to sell tires than to go 1, 2, 3 at Louisville.
Yeah, that's like winning the Powerball, guys. So.
Yeah, somebody's phone was ringing yesterday morning and this morning, I'm sure.
For sure.
So, well, Jason, we can wrap this up. I mean, I don't want to keep you guys too late. I know Miles is putting kids to bed and he's got lambs to deal with, but
Dan and Miles kind of like, obviously, have you guys heard, are you doing Mac Trailer again in April 1st or?
Yeah, we'll be at the Mac Trailer show, and then we were supposed to. I'll be at Shipshawana here in a couple weeks.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was supposed
Miles
to be.
Miles supposed to be with me, but he's got to go out to Vegas.
But I've got to fly to Vegas for the Con Expo now. My bosses we've started a new partnership with a company called Wolf Heavy Equipment, and I've got to fly out to Vegas and work a booth out there for a few days. So I'm going to miss the Shipshawana show, unfortunately. But,
sounds like a rough gig, Miles.
I want to go back to that, that idea real quick of the Mac show. And I don't want anybody to think for a second that that Louisville isn't Louisville. It's a neat venue. Freedom Hall is awesome. Pulling it opposite direction made a big difference in terms of the experience and the way that they staged all of the competitors in Freedom Hall. Took away the first basically level of seats all the way around the venue. So, a full house in there would be about 8,000 or 9,000. And so it does have a totally different feel than a farm show. And I think, as an announcer of both, like I said a minute ago, I don't want to take anything away from the Mac show because it was a really neat deal. It didn't have the same kind of intensity or feel, I guess is the right thing to say about farm show. It's just farm show and everybody's amped and ready. But they were pulling for $10,000 to win. And that's a pretty good chunk of change.
Nice.
So, there was still an element of intensity and an element of let's go get this done,
Yeah, I thought last year, with the Mac Trailer show, I think the cool part was, they took like the top, 6 PPL, the top 6 NTPA guys and girls and mixed them all up. And I thought that, and like Miles mentioned, going for 10,000 to win, it was a neat, a totally neat deal, and the crowd too was 180 degrees different. We talked a little bit about that earlier. The truck show crowd was, I don't know if, a lot of them hadn't been to a pole before, but it was really just an energetic crowd, and they were into it, and it was really neat. So it's be interesting to see how it builds for this year too.
And what are the dates on that? The Mac show you're talking about? What are the dates?
April 1st.
April 1st.
Saturday, April 1st.
Okay. Well, I think the purpose of this show was to kind of show people the men behind the microphone, the voices behind the microphone, and talk to you guys, let people get to know you a little bit, and get your feelings on the the farm show. I think everybody in this on this show right now thinks it went great and are looking forward to 2024. You guys have a busy seasons ahead, I assume.
Yeah, it's looks like busy as ever. That once summer hits, and we'll be all over the place. Got to do a show with you, Ron. I haven't done one with
a little
you.
bit more selective.
Well, Cowtown 2024 is already in the works, so just throwing that out there.
Okay.
I'm not as involved in all the shows as Dan is now. We show more sheep than tractor pulling these days, it seems. But I'm gonna go to maybe 6 or 7, and that'll be a lot for me. So,
okay.
But thank you for what you guys do, and thank you for having us and inviting us, and
Absolutely, yes,
carrying the banner with these podcasts. So appreciate
That was
it.
great to have, you guys are well-known announcers, famous announcers, and just coming off a farm show. It was good to, to show Dan's face and Miles' face to the Outlaw crew. So we really appreciate you guys coming on tonight. And thank you again for all your help with full pull bets in that presentation. You know, Dan and I
We
were
need
supposed
to-
to be the color guys if it got a little long-winded or whatever. But man, Dan and I looked around, and that room was full of engaged people. And Dan's like, "Don't do nothing, Jason. Just shut up." And I'm like, "Yes, sir."
We need
Yeah,
to,
it was they had Miles had the audience, they had them in their lap, so it was everybody wanted to hear what it was, and and it's the sky's the limit. That's the just if everybody just kind of just sit back and see
Let it
Mm-hmm.
what's
happen.
going to happen, and keep the negativity down. That's just listen and see what happens.
my final word I'll throw at you is I do want to congratulate Mr. Bennett as well. I know I talked about my dad's induction, but it was good to see Dave, and I want to congratulate him on his induction into the Hall of Fame as well as all the others. So thank you again, gentlemen. I'm going to jump off of here and get ready to get my oldest to bed. So thank you again.
Miles, thank you so much for coming on, buddy. Thank you. Great
See you
job
later.
this year. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
And Dan, thank you for coming on. Thanks for doing the farm show. I mean, you have a very recognizable voice. It's easy to tell. And Miles as well. When you hear that voice, it's going to be a good tractor pull. So,
Yeah, I
thank you
wasn't sure if you were going to have Mr. Bennett on. I wanted to
I
give
tried.
one final ribbon there, but
I tried.
no, congratulations to him. Really, that's an awesome deal, and it's kind of tough keeping everything under the hat there, but yeah,
We should set up a roast, Ron.
For Dave Bennett?
That would be.
Yeah, let's roast Bennett. Let's get a bunch of announcers on here some night.
Oh wow, what a great
We
idea!
can have seriously, we can have up to 10 people on the show at one time. So that would be fun. That would be fun.
That'd be fun. Yeah,
I
that would
think
be.
he'd like that a lot.
It would be. Now, I did call him, and he said he was hauling some equipment to Nebraska and wouldn't be able to come on. And like I said, I tried to get a hold of Leslie as well, and she was on the road. But yeah, Dave, I spoke earlier about getting all of us on here and getting us all to shut up would be hard, but because you have a bunch of announcers on here together. I'll talk to Dave Bennett on the phone, and it'll feel like 15 minutes, and I'll look at the phone, and it's dying. It's like, we've been talking for 2 hours, Dave. I got to go. But yeah. Thanks, Dan, so much. Appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you out on the road this summer, and especially at the Mac Trailer deal. I mean, I'll probably be there. So
okay, good deal.
If I see you,
yeah, thank you guys, for everything you guys do too. I mean, like you say, it's carrying the torch, and everybody, represent the sport the best we can. That's and that's what that's what it's all about.
Let's get it out there and take it to the next level. That's
absolutely.
I think we all have a common goal there. So, Dan Mayer, appreciate it, buddy. Have a good night.
Thanks. Thanks, guys. We'll see you. All right. Yep. Bye.
Ron Stone, well done, sir. That was fun.
That was cool.
Super fun.
What's that? No,
that was super fun. Yeah, super fun. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
I thought you said super farm. My mind is thinking about pulling, and you said super fun. I'm thinking super farm. So, yeah, those guys, great show this year. Great.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It about wore me out, and I really didn't party this year. It just wore me out, man.
It's a long day. Saturday is one that really gets you because it's just bang bang, and it's the fourth day. So, who was our best? Who got to the finals? Who were our best finishers? So 4-wheel drive mod trucks. 2 of the top 3 came out of the Outlaws, correct? Skelton and Miller.
Yep. Charlie Miller took second in modified 4-wheel drive, and
Skelton were third.
And Skelton took third. Of course, he was the defending champ from last season. He won it last season.
And then we had the Medding made the finals.
Medding won his preliminary, went to the finals. Where did he end up? I don't remember where he ended
last.
Up overall.
He ended up last.
Yeah. Bowles.
Second place.
That's second place. Had to hook again. I think he did some damage. He had a big old pop there at the end. I'm not sure what happened to that, but
yeah, alcohol likes to pop.
Had to hook twice, and the first pull was awesome, and then they reset the sled after 2 tractors and had to come back. He ended up taking place.
Claypool's tire, man, that was wild. Chandler got a great video of that. We've been sharing that around. So,
Yeah. Now there was rumors that he had no screws in the tire, that's impossible. And I talked to him that night, and he said no, there was 60 screws in that tire. He said it was secure.
Eric and Joe, they know better than that.
Yeah. So
I talked to a lot of pullers, and they said that was probably one of the best Louisville tracks they've been on from a power, from a horsepower standpoint. It was taken.
really,
So it wasn't greasy. So we talked about that a little bit last night on the Badger State show.
They said the dirt got to lay in there a little longer, and they got to work it a little longer, so it settled down a little bit, and they were able to pack it a little better.
Oh, it's hard, you don't realize that it's on top of concrete. We're used to outdoors where that moisture can just come up through. Well, there's no moisture in the concrete,
Right.
so they have to put it in it and let it sit. So no, that's what I've heard too, Ron. So, but guys were shifting down this year more than in the past into those lower gears. So, well, good deal, Ron.
Yeah, congratulations to all the Outlaws that got to go, the Outlaws that finished well. Congratulations to all the winners and all the pullers that got to go from all organizations. It was a great National Farm Machinery Show Championship Truck and Tractor Pull. I 2 thumbs up. So,
yep, and good job tonight getting Miles and Dan on. That was pretty neat. So, the pulling season is going to be here fast now, and you know it. I mean, we're literally just a couple months away, and it's going to be balls to the wall. So,
yeah,
but it's going to be fun. So, Outlaw season officially starts when? Is it Sedalia?
First Saturday in June, Sedalia, Missouri, the Dream Factory pull, charity pull for the Dream Factory there in Sedalia. Looking forward to it, and then once that starts, man, it's off to the races.
Yep.
I'm excited about all the the shootouts and the sweeps we've got coming up. We're still working on new stuff. We've got a big smoke shootout coming up right off the bat from Whitewright to Rock Valley. Diesel super stocks are going to be competing for $5,000 extra in the big smoke shootout. So then you got the Holganics Midsummer Sweep.
It's so cool that they came on board. We'll be talking about them more in the future.
Yep, absolutely. They're going to be doing some big things for pulling. So
for you, Ron, being an announcer and obviously being the vice president of the Outlaws and just being very, very involved, what's it like for you to sit back and watch?
Pretty refreshing to just sit there and watch. I mean, I can't help but look down and see what's going on over here in the staging area. And I'm kind of guilty of texting, like I texted Miles a couple things that I seen going on, just to kind of give him the inside scoop, because they were at the other end of the track, and they're over here, putting a spark plug in Theobald's tractor where he blew one to the rafters, in his first pull, and just things like that. You're still looking at things,
Right.
like what as an announcer, you're looking, to see exactly what happens so you can, interpret it, translate it to the crowd, But I'm a pulling fan, I'm that guy that wants to see the first tractor go down the track and the last one, So, whether there's a mic in my hand or not, I love it. So,
nope, I agree. It's going to be a fun summer. It's going to be a fun future. The future is very, very bright for the Outlaws and pulling in general. And Kurt was really excited just to see those big crowds down there. As the owner of an association, just to see, basically record crowds, if you will.
Encouraging, yeah.
Yeah, just makes you feel good. Like, hey, this thing's heading in the right direction. So.
Yeah, and
yep.
there was a lot of knee-jerk reactions on social media to the full pull bets thing, and I think once people get the whole story, a lot of the assumptions are just that, and they're wrong.
Well, like Ron, I said last night on my show, if you don't, the Outlaws, the NTPA, and the PPL would never have signed up if money's not coming back to the associations and the pullers. Everybody wants a number. Everybody wants a percentage. Guys, it's a brand new business. They can't do any of that yet. There's no way that the NTPA, the PPL, and the Outlaws would say, yeah, just come in and make a bunch of money on us. No, never.
Yeah, I think it's a step, and the way that the Outlaws, the way that PPL, the way that NTPA see it, is we're going to get some new eyes on the sport. We're going to get some new eyes on pulling, and I think we're going to gain fans from it. And I think that's what we're looking for, is bringing pulling to that next level, getting some more eyes on it, some more fans introduced to the sport, and hopefully building even a larger fan base, which is better for the future of pulling. And it looks like we lost Jason there. So we'll leave it at that. Hope everybody had a good time with the show tonight. Hopefully everybody that went to the Farm Machinery Show watched it on the live stream, had a great time. We're excited to go pulling this year. Tune in next Tuesday night, every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Central for Outlawed Live with me, Ron Stone, and Jason Schultz. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Have a great night.